On the subject of a perception of inequality, as I would think about it, I guess I would suggest that it's not so much about perception as it is definition. And it gets complicated just because there's the distinction between subjective thinking and objective thinking again gets in our way. As human beings, we are so motivated by nepotism and nationalism and all that racism. We're biologically almost naturally oriented to be classist or groupist in how we perceive the world. It's always this us versus them. I mean, that was probably important to our survival. The tribal thing can be still seen in the Middle East and other places. People, it's just part of the mechanism of evolution once you become a society and dependent on that. But it all filters down to the same thing, is that again, it's the obligation is to try to discipline our intelligence against that subjective bias. And I would agree that equality, is an ideal. It's a nice principle, but there's no point in sitting around singing Kumbaya and pretending that there aren't obstacles or impediments or even real issues that divide us and separate us. My argument would be that instead of trying to define that equality, we can certainly define unequality. We can certainly define the negative. We can certainly define the corruptions that shouldn't be part of the definition, especially for a society. I mean, nepotism and love for your family is good social policy, maybe. I mean, good family policy, but it's not good social policy. We've got to discipline ourselves against our personal biases, and that's just logical. I mean, that's just it's a first logical step, is to accept that there's a flaw in the way we think, and that we have to be careful not to let that error invade our thinking. And so, I mean, there's no one's going to tell me my father isn't better than your father. I mean, no one's, subjectively, I'm never going to feel that, okay, he's always going to be more or, superhuman, and that's just a fact of that's just a fact of my emotional identity. But I also know that if I had to make a decision in a social context or in an objective context, that I can discipline myself against that prejudice. I can do it. That's what intelligence allows us to do. It allows us to discipline ourselves against our emotions and to act intelligently and not like stupid, ignorant, dumb animals. And so that's sort of where I would go as a the future. This really has to be almost part of, we swear all kinds of oaths and we write all kinds of things on money and we do all this other stuff, but I mean, this is a real fundamental part of, if we're going to evolve as an intelligent organism, we've really got to get past this hurdle. We've really got to recognize that subjectively we are idiots, and that can't define policy. It can't define how we build the future. It can't define how we look at the whole human race. It's just stupid. It's a prejudice, and we have to accept that it exists inside of us. So that's, and it's a huge, I know it's a huge obstacle, because as soon as you tell people that they can't live their biases, they'll come up with all kinds of excuses to defend their superiority, or why acting on their personal prejudice makes sense. It's almost some sort of blue blood argument. They'll go, well, our family has superior genetics, and that's why I'm allowed to love my family more, or some other kind of crap. And but we can't let that happen. We can't. We're just not going to go anywhere if we don't find a way to discipline ourselves as a society, as a culture, against that influence. And so, yeah, the hell with this nationalism crap, the hell with statism. Look at the way how even the United States, you got these 50 states, competing with each other to screw each other up. Let's see if we can undercut the state next to us in terms of the incentives we give businesses, so businesses will move over here. Like, yeah, we somehow create more jobs over in this state and steal them from that other state, that's somehow an accomplishment. Yeah, so we stole from ourselves basically to feed ourselves. It just doesn't, we're not accomplishing anything. We are hurting ourselves to gain. I mean, that's just, it's a waste of time. It's wasted energy. It's just really utterly pointless. And once we recognize that so much of how we perceive things is just based on, petty, unimportant gut reactions that don't have anything to do with a fair and objective and intelligent evaluation of a circumstance. And so it's really easy to just say towel head or some other bullshit and just minimize and reduce people to nothing. But reduce them through logic if you must. Don't fool yourself and think that it isn't some kind of pretty superficial list of bullshit that you're using to contrive an excuse to validate your disgust or hate of a certain class or group or whatever. Because it is all, it's emotional rubbish and baggage, and it's something for us to overcome. But like I said, I mean, we're so far away from being there. That's it almost even becomes unrealistic to even talk about it, because there's so many people just living on that hate, just living on that superficial thinking, and but it doesn't go anywhere as a social policy. I mean, and then when you get into the whole economics and inheritance and the whole idea, it's all these wrong forces. We haven't created a merit society, or a fair society, because it's just corrupted by all these personal biases. And so it's never a fair race and a fair contest. Not that I would even see a purpose in people competing against each other anyway. I mean, obviously people have to have motivation and incentive to pull their weight or to make their contribution sometimes. Some people would just do absolutely nothing except feed off of everyone else if there wasn't some sort of incentive for them to make a contribution. And so you have to have some sort of mechanisms to inspire some sort of motivation. But we've taken to this preposterous capitalist, cutthroat extreme, where we're basically cannibalizing each other. We're turning each other into slaves, and it's just so counterproductive when you think about, what's the elite of our society, if you want to call them that, what they cost to maintain in terms of the human discomfort and indignity that must be endured. I mean, they have to have somebody to wipe their ass and scrub their toes and do, I mean, it's this whole list of servants to, accomplish all these things just to make them, socially dysfunctional, not necessarily happy consumers. I mean, they're just mass consumers. So anyway, I won't get into all economics. Good video, and this is part of the equation. Is how do we think about these things, and what part of our brain do we use to do the thinking?